I am 100%, and I'd be there in the Walmart parking lot with you to get the signature.
I'd like to watch that. I'd like to see that.
And I don't want to delay the pool in any way at all, but I believe we need to start this partnership with a solid foundation.
Exactly.
And if you have an opt-out of 90 days, that's a very weak foundation to build something of this magnitude.
Well, I would say that we need to get started, and maybe it's not as strong as we want. I think it's a good, strong start to start with, and I think in terms of strengthening that, have these guys who serve on this JPA come back with an amendment prior to next spring, when we have, hopefully we'll have a project to find a location, and we have that, and I think in terms of doing that, have them suggest how they would like to make it ironclad past, because once you break ground and you start building, that's when you can't turn back, that's when you can't change.
Where does it say that though?
Why can't we have that in there between now and the next meeting? We're not gonna go on today.
I know.
So it's on 26th, we're gonna come back. Why can't we have that change?
Well, we're coming back next Monday.
I'm sorry.
I mean, even.
I don't have a problem with that being added to it, and the council can take it up and ratify it if they want.
I feel more comfortable, I mean, not that we have it in our budget, but I'd sign in my name to the whole 400 grand than I would half of something knowing the other guy could back out. Then you're.
That's my big concern. I'm glad
Well-
you agree with me.
This is a historic partnership between the city and the county, and I just have to have faith in the fact that the people are the ones driving this, and if either entity wants to welch,
Yeah.
do so at the mercy of the people.
Exactly, but still, it just doesn't seem like the right business principle.
I trust the people far more than anything that's written on any
What
of
is
these
today?
papers.
Today's Tuesday. Brad, what's the schedule? Could you throw something together, you and Marty, Martine, between now and then?
Well, I mean, we can discuss anything on the part of it, I just sort of need some direction what you're interested in. I mean, like, for example, you know, the agreement provides for a 15-year funding commitment, so the JPA, should the county and the city have to be a member for 15 years? Is that kind of your thought?
Yeah, yeah. And there's no backing out, you know, you're either in it or you're out, and if we're in, we're both in together, for better or for worse.
Yeah, you know, 5, 10 years down the road, I don't want my name on a bad agreement that people are saying, why did that do this? You know, who were these guys? What were they thinking?
Again,
Hard to try to get it right. How many times did it turn around and upside down? Sharing it around the public.
The JPA is legitimately for you, if the authority wants to make that change, we can, and what Supervisor Chapman said is also the case. Once the JPA is formed, they can also make that change. There are
Well, their
choices
change
to do.
is subject to ratification by the two
Correct.
bodies, so they can bring back any change, and if they want to make that their first order of their business, then I'd say do that. But my concern is that this is November, and as, you know, we had reached this point back at the end of August and 1st of September, and I said back then, the best way to kill this is to talk it to death, and if this thing drags on past Thanksgiving, you might as well just kiss it goodbye. And I'm sorry, I'm not wasting my time kissing something goodbye. This should have been done in October.
Let's don't go too fast and make a mistake. I'm for the JPA, so there, we just want the wording, this is a flaw in the agreement, we want to fix. And I will vote yes.
I'm ready to vote Monday if we could change it. I wanna have a committed partner, not a.
At our meeting on Monday, if you make a motion that the JPA be amended to bind both parties for 15 years and that passes, now that amended agreement would be legitimately for your door.
What I would suggest that what we do is we
You
keep
have to go
this,
back and get ratified by the city.
we keep
That's
this,
not what
yeah, we
the
keep this on the table for consideration on Monday, and between now and Monday, if you guys, working with Marty or Brett or whoever, come up with a substitute wording to put in one of these paragraphs, I'm more than willing to give that consideration. But I want us to adopt something, but I want you to vote for it.
I will vote for it,
Okay,
but help me out.
I want you to
got
vote
Larry
for
on my side.
okay.
Okay. The public, Mrs. Spencer, we'll start with you.
I'm gonna throw you all a compliment,
Oh, boy.
because it's a well-kept secret how well you've run this county. And I don't know why you can't brag about being debt-free. You should be
We did.
bragging about it
We did
more.
last year when we ran for reelection, and I beat your guy too.
I almost got beat.
My guy, I don't vote for you. You're not in my
I know, but you were giving support to my opponent, and that's fine.
I don't think so.
We beat it.
Okay.
Anyway,
You did vote for me, didn't you?
I didn't.
I did over two on that question.
And Assemblyman Dowling took that and he went on a district level too.
But I do want to make it a public, very public, that this is a very well-run, financially well-run county.
Well, thank you.
Looking intimately at your budget, we discovered a lot of people, there were about 8 of us that, two were CPAs, found that you guys can throw out the JPA and you can pay cash for this. You can pay cash for this. I think the only issue was that the $400,000 a year maintenance, you don't want to take that on yourself, but the money's there. I mean, if you want me to make a presentation on Monday or now, it doesn't make any difference, but the money is there to pay cash. You're very flush with money. I've been to other counties and other cities that say they are so far in debt, and sometimes they really are. You have no debt. You can make this a county pool, pay cash for it, and put aside $400,000 a year to maintain it. I don't think it's gonna cost $400,000 a year to maintain it, but I've never seen any numbers from you guys that says it's gonna be $400,000.
The 400,000 that was the basis of the agreement or the approach that Mr. Wilson and I took was based on the CAO's working group. The 400,000 was the identification for revenue raising through like a sales tax increase or some property assessment to generate enough money to pay for not only the construction, but the operation and maintenance. So it's all 3 of those. So part of it would be envisioning borrowing some money. Now this is before anybody started talking about the money we have in the budget. And I appreciate the fact that you are taking that back, because I've been saying that for quite a while now, and no one wants to believe me. So
It's
now,
true.
and now I'm
It's
scared
true.
because you do. But
You want me to hug you right now?
no, but the point being is the 400,000, envision paying back some sort of indebtedness that would be incurred, and then there would be money available for maintenance and operation. And in addition to the 400,000, it's also based on the running of the historic operation of Roosevelt Pool, that there between 80 and 120,000 is generally the amount of revenue that could be generated by the users of the pool. So this isn't like for free. And that gives this group, and we just kind of estimated 100,000 rounded off, give or take some. So roughly $500,000 would be the basis for the financing of the operation of this JPA. So how much of that they use for paying back some money they borrow, whether they need to or not, or how much they use. And if indeed, and my attitude is, if our share of the construction, let's say we build a $2 million pool, and it would cost $1.4 million for each entity to pay back what they would borrow, instead of me borrowing $1 million and paying $400,000 interest over a period of time, and I've got $1 million sitting in an account, I could say, here's our $1 million. So that eliminates that portion of it. And so instead of having to put $200,000 into the pot, we would only contribute. And that's why it's worded up to $200,000. So our annual contribution may only be $75,000.
The JPA is starting to sound really cumbersome and unnecessary, because the county has the ability to pay cash and build this pool and maintain it.
I disagree with you.
Okay, I can give you numbers. If you want me to give you numbers, I will give you numbers on Monday.
I've
We're
seen the
prepared to
numbers.
do that.
I've seen the numbers.
Yeah, we're prepared to do that. Second, in April of this year, you approved a contract with Aquatic Design Group, and I spoke with them, and I guess you hired them to design the pool?
I don't think we got that far. Jim's on the committee, I don't know, we didn't get that.
Okay,
You know,
you,
Marty was the one that hired them to do, for this committee, his CAO's committee,
they're
and that,
very frustrated people. You spent $2,197.30 with them, and you just he put a kibosh on it. They're not doing anything for you. I think the contract was for $20,000 to design your pool, but their issue was they can't do anything for you because there's no, you have to pick the place before they can help you.
And the pool committee made a decision.
Where it's going to be?
No, to stop with this consultant and move in a different direction, which is the county and the city becoming part of it.
So Aquatic is not gonna get any more business? Is that what you're saying?
I can't
Not-
say that,
not-
'cause I don't know what the JPA is.
not from the county CAO committee, is they're gonna get any more contracts, but that doesn't preclude the JPA, when it's formed, if they wanna negotiate or work with this group or other groups, they will have, that's something they can do.
Even though it's a contract between you and them?
Well, that contract would basically cease to exist, it would be abandoned, and the JPA would have to form a new contract with them. So it would not be, they're two different things.
I think I'm 120,000% in favor of this pool. And I personally wouldn't do anything to disrupt it. But this JPA sounds like you don't need it. You just don't need it. You're complicating things and delaying things because of a document the county as an entity doesn't need. So if you want this passed, crap this thing and just vote to money to build a pool and maintain it. You've got parks throughout this, and like Larry said, you've got parks throughout this that you don't have a 15-year commitment to keep. You have buildings that you maintain. You don't have a 15-year commitment to maintain these. And Larry's right, you don't need that deadline of commitment on here. This will be a county pool paid for by cash, maintained cash by the county. And this, whoever's idea this JPA was, I think it was just to bung things up because you don't need it.
That's not correct.
You don't need this.
We have a lot of successful JPA, Transportation
Like
Commission.
Trindle? Like Trindle? Don't get me started on that
Okay,
JPA.
thank you for your comment. Anybody else? Public wish to speak?
I guess I don't have a comment, but I do have a question.
Because you have a child, I'll let you sit back.
Okay, thank you. So if they make an amendment, Tracy Langsley, to this, to the JPA, then what does that do to the city vote? Do they have to go back and
Yes,
re-vote again?
if we make a change next Monday and it's in the city, that's about the city, they have to ratify that change. They make a change, that's to them.
They would have to agree to
It
the
doesn't
change
stop
also.
going back and forth until both of them have an identical document.
Right, okay, that answers my question.
Brian?
Brian Wilson, City Council. I would suggest that, since it looks like you guys are kind of coming to some sort of an agreement here, that on Monday, since the city's obviously gonna have to vote on this again, I'd suggest that the city, that we go back to that original plan, which was that we get both boards together in the same room at the same time, so we stop this ping pong back and forth, and let's get it done.
What are you guys doing Monday mornings?
Well, Jared?
Having a meeting with the Board of Supervisors.
For this particular item, so it stops going back and forth, and let's just get this thing done.
We can do that.
That'd be my suggestion.
And let's, do that. Jared, you have a comment on that?
No, just one, we had this, I've had an opportunity to meet with our city council members as well, and
State your name for the tape.
can I use Violet's name?
Yeah.
You can use Riley Spencer,
and there-
Riley Spencer, Mrs. Spencer.
Mr. Hancock, City Susan Mills, City Administrator.
Mister.
So my wife doesn't call me.
Well, we will try to
There's,
get a wife's call.
all of these, they're all really good questions. They're all, all of the questions about who's, where it's gonna be, and how, and the funding, and how the agreement's gonna work, and all those things. you know, all those decisions about what it's gonna look like are very important. That's what Al City Council has been talking about, and that's what they've shared with me. And the question about the funding has come up as well. You know, I believe the first agreement, Marty, Mr. Nichols had a provision in there that it was very difficult to pull out, and the revenues would be taken out by, through the tax process. And that was removed between the first and the second draft, and I don't remember, you know, and it was based on a request that someone wanted that removed. And so we've, you know, this, I appreciate the long-term vision that you're taking, that if we're gonna do it, let's do it right. And in those discussions, we had really realized that ultimately, you know, right now, it works the way it is. That we're in that study, design, and phase right now, but ultimately, you know, if it's chosen to be paid for with cash, or if it's chosen to be financed, or whatever, I can't imagine the JPA being able to get financing for the pool without amending that that provision of the agreement of securing that funding. And really, you know, we could discuss it till we're blue in the face today of exactly how we're gonna word that, but ultimately, if it's financed, the bank's gonna require, you know, what that wording will look like. And ultimately, I guess my point is, this is really getting us to the starting line. This JPA agreement is going to evolve between now and when a shovel goes in the ground, and there's gonna be multiple discussions and multiple meetings and all those, and a lot of questions that need to be answered to make sure that this is feasible and viable and what the community wants. And so the city council has voted 3-2 to get to that starting point. So that's why they felt like the agreement wasn't perfect, but is any agreement perfect? And did it provide the necessary framework to be able to move forward? Yes. Is it gonna need to be amended as we move forward and come up against additional questions that need answered? Absolutely. But are the city and the county partnered on this, and are we going to work cooperatively and together to solve this problem? That's really the question that pushed out city council members to approve it and to move forward rather than, you know, going back and forth. So if the board has, you know, 1 or 2 specific things that they feel like have to be in there right now, then I respect that, and we'll do what it takes to have a joint meeting and to try and get that buttoned out. But ultimately, I think this is good for the community. Not necessarily, mostly that the city and the county are jointly tackling an issue that's been ongoing. And so I appreciate the time and the energy that you put in studying and looking into it, and we look forward to working with you on it.
Thank you, Jared. So, Jared and Marty to get together and put that together. Joint meeting together. Can we do that, Marty?
We can't, are we doing that on Monday afternoon?
Monday-
Then there's gonna be
Monday
another
morning.
I'm sorry, Monday, but then it's gonna need to be a special meeting of the board.
Well, I would say that portion of it should be a special meeting, and then the continued portion would be the RCD thing, and follow the pool meeting.
All right, so we're amending our motion this morning. The continued meeting will just be on RCD, and that'll be at 9 o'clock.
Yeah.
We can.
Yes, or either reversing it.
Well, I mean, if that's what, to be honest with you, I'm ready to vote on this today. I mean, I have no problem doing that.
We've got to change that one.
Yeah, and as Jared pointed out, whatever sort of amendments that are gonna have to be made, I think over the next 3 months, you know, as this project comes together, is defined and takes shape and whatever sort of strengthening needs to be done, it needs to be done before we, dig the first shovel of dirt. And I think I don't have a problem with us going through that process, because this thing is we're gonna find, there are gonna be other issues that we probably aren't even thinking about today that could come up that would cause us to have, you know, some amendments to it. So I don't think this is finite, but I think it's the starting point. We need to get started. And that's the issue that's really before us.
Thank you. The things that need to be changed on ongoing, like we say, are gonna be the little tweaks and all this, but I mean, this that we're bringing up is the pillar of the whole thing. So it's not a thing where you pass it knowing the whole structure of the foundation of what you're trying to do needs to be changed right away.
Okay.
from the other group, that's what I'm saying.
Well, between now and
Get it?
Monday, if you two can come up with the revised pillar, let's go for it.
We'll do.
Okay.
The problem is, okay, you get that pillar, and then somebody else comes along and says, well, I want my dryer's bed located over here, and then somebody else wants,
Well, Jim, no. Come on.
hey,
This should have never been presented like this. We could have saved a long time. I brought this up a month ago. You know, I couldn't support an agreement where the other side could back out, you
That's
know.
what I wrote my column on, I mean.
And so the fact that it's taken long isn't on me. I made that very clear that I thought that was ridiculous to enter into a shaky, it's like a three-legged
Okay,
agreement.
let's don't keep going on.
Anyhow, yeah.
Okay, so we're set, there will be a joint meeting Monday.
I would say we take a motion, we took an action this morning for our other agenda, approval of agenda, that we modify the agenda direction and that a special joint meeting with the city council be held at 9 o'clock on Monday for the purposes of addressing and hammering out the final details of this JPA, whatever sort of amendments that need to be made and want to be made and can be made, and that the RCD agenda item that's part of this current agenda be agendized to follow that as a continuation of this meeting.
That's a motion, you have a second.
So the motion is to call, so determine, the motion is to call a special meeting of the Board of Supervisors.
With the city council,
We can't call the city council, special meeting of the Board of Supervisors for Monday.
for the purpose of meeting with the city council.
For Monday at 9 o'clock to consider the adoption of the pool JPA. The city will need to do likewise.
Right.
Okay, and do we have a location?
Right here.
This is gonna be too small.
No, I think we need to go to a bigger, I think we need to go to a, and I think either the council, maybe possibly either the Vets Hall or Dental Hall or some place like that. I think you need to have a little bit bigger room.
Think of that many people.
It could be.
Not
So,
that many
so,
people.
so the,
Well, that's because they knew we're not voting right.
we need to put the location of the meeting here, so Jensen Hall,
You see, we have to see what's there.
How about, I would say the Vets Hall would be, I mean, that,
Better check, I didn't wanna say anything, but they've got some rehearsals and stuff going on there too. Typically daytime is not an issue, but it might be a good idea.
well, this is during the day,
I know,
9 o'clock in the morning.
that's what I mean, would be a good idea to check.
I would say that the motion would be at a location to be determined by city and county staff, so we don't have to designate the exact time, as long as it's in the notice that's published. So you've got 48 to 72 hours to figure that out.
Jared, you're looking nervous.
Yeah, I am. Do you, Mr. Nichols, from the first draft to the second draft, do you remember why we took those two provisions out?
it was not in the draft, it was in the letter from Mr. Wilson and Mr. Chapman, it was not included in the draft. The be able to vote for taxes.
Okay. And is that, I'm just concerned that we might be making it more difficult than we need to be. Is there, and maybe I'm not, so the concern is that, you know, the JPA agreement works, but the provision of being able to, pull out, and that loss of funding needs to be put back in to the agreement, is that?
I think there's two separate issues here, I think. The first issue is just the withdrawal, and it seems like we have at least two members, maybe three, that want some sort of term in here that says the city and county shall be members of the JPA for 15 years.
Hello?
And with no withdrawal provision before that. It seems to me
Money
consistent.
needs to keep.
Well, but then the second issue on the money is, I think there's a legal issue there, whether or not by a JPA, you can bind the county to, you know, to appropriate the money. I think legally, that needs to be subject to the board and the city's annual appropriation process. So if the JPA is amended, it doesn't guarantee the funding, but it does guarantee your
Well, I
participation.
think the way you address the ongoing appropriations, it has to be part of the ongoing budget appropriation, but the way you create the certainty, which is gonna be necessary, particularly if you look at financing, is that you, and provide the political stability, is that whatever we come up with as a final product, I think submitting that to the voters to ratify, I think would be the prudent thing to do, because that takes away the uncertainty. Now, the JPA can't put that on the ballot, but the county can or the city can. The city can only do it within the city limits. The county can do it countywide, which includes the city limits. And I think in terms of having the voters address that question to basically take the our legislative power is limited on a year-to-year basis. The people's legislative powers is legislated for the big picture. And I mean, that doesn't mean that down the road in 5 or 10 years, if the voters want to repeal that, they can, because what they give, they can take away. But the board, in terms of whether it's the city council or the board of supervisors, are limited in terms of making that long term. So it may be that if we can put together a reasonable proposal that meets the expectation of the public, that can then be submitted to them to ratify before we get to the position where we're actually digging dirt and so forth, I think that's the prudent thing to do. And to do that, you're going to need to get it on the ballot by March. But in order to have something ready that's credible by March, you better get started now. You might even be a little bit too late as we speak. And the month that we've lost that Larry alluded to is gives me the same heartburn that you have.
So it sounds like Supervisor Wasik is saying that if the best way to keep both agencies in the JPA is to keep their money in it.
Well, yeah.
If their money's gonna stay in there, then obviously they're gonna wanna stay in
The only
there.
purpose of having a JPA is to bring the two pools of money together. There's a lot of other parties that would like to be part of the JPA, but they don't have any money. And so if we're gonna use, the people who have the money are the ones that have to ante up to the game.
But it sounds like the CAO's concern is that if you put a provision in there that mandates that the money go in every year outside of the regular appropriations of the budget, that may not be a legal option.
I'm concerned.
It's not a legal option, I think, given this, but it would be a legitimate option if the voters ratified or approved it come like next June. Or November if you mess up the deadline for June.
It just sounds like, we're, we're talking about the logistics of setting up another meeting to put both of the groups together to kind of fine tune this document more and more, and it seems like that we're very close right now, and that I'm not sure, it would be nice for me to be able to go back to the city council with specifically what change was being requested. But again, Supervisor Pyle, city staff is going to be watching this JPA like a hawk, as is county staff. That anything that they put out, any of the numbers they're putting out about what it's going to cost to operate, any of the numbers of what it's going to cost to construct, every little bit that comes out of that, we're going to be fully vetting that, because the last thing we want to do is start down the road without money being put into a project that isn't on track to be completed and open and ready to go and meeting the needs. So, there's going to be a lot of pressure on that JPA to do it right and to put that information together. But it sounds like, the city council dropped the agreement as is, knowing that it wasn't perfect, but knowing that there's going to need to be amendments that we brought back to them and brought back to the board to put in. And so I'm just trying to I'm trying to wrap my head around the most prudent and efficient way to address the concern about the ongoing commitment that's legal, so that it can be enforceable, and that is satisfactory to the board, so that we can come together and get to the starting line essentially.
It's simple. Both parties stay in for 15 years. Both parties contribute $200,000 each year.
Up to 200 grand.
Up to 200. Yeah. It doesn't have to be any more complicated than that. And if somebody wants to challenge that legally, let them. I'm sure counties and cities.
But once we get that ball rolling, if you want to cement that the wording in the JPA is not going to be the guarantee. What's going to be the guarantee is the voter support. And it's important to note, because when you say voter, the first thing that is put out, especially by the opposition to this issue, is that we're going for a tax. We're not talking about any new tax or any new revenue generating, so it doesn't require that 2/3 vote. Okay, so it's using existing tax revenues in the existing budgets, okay, that would be involved. In this case, for the county, we're looking at the tobacco settlement money. What the city decides to use, that would be up to them to define. But we're talking about using existing revenues, and that only requires a majority vote. It's a legislative act, just like we make a legislative act when we voted on September 5th, 3-2 to approve a budget. That's a legislative act, and that's what the voters, and they have the ability to do it for the long term. We just have the ability to do it for these year in, year out snippets. And so I think ultimately, they can make that kind of guarantee, because once they vote on that, and they basically submit, they bless